Today, we are diving deep into a line item you see on pretty much every balance sheet, accounts receivable. Now, it's really easy to just gloss over this as another accounting term, but trust me, that's a huge mistake. You should think of it less like a number and more like a pulse check for the entire business. It tells a real story about a company's health, its customers, and most importantly, its ability to turn a simple sale into actual cash in the bank.
All right, so here's our game plan. First, we're going to nail down the basics, what AR actually is. Then we'll follow the money through its entire life cycle, seeing it as a critical business process. After that, we'll put on our analyst hats and explore what this number reveals and the key metrics we use to track performance. We'll also look at the risks, what happens when things go south, before pulling it all together for the strategic big picture. So, first things first, let's get a crystal clear definition. What exactly are we talking about when we say accounts receivable? At its heart, accounts receivable is just the grand total of all the IOUs a company is holding from its customers. So imagine a company delivers a service and shoots off an invoice. The second that invoice goes out, that dollar amount becomes part of their accounts receivable. They've earned the money, but the cash, not in the bank yet. And because they have a legal claim to that cash, it gets listed as a current asset on the balance sheet, which just means they expect to collect it within the year.
This slide shows something really fundamental about business. Your receivable is always someone else's payable. For the company sending the bill, it's an asset, money coming in. But for the company getting that bill, it's a liability, an obligation to pay up. They're two sides of the exact same coin, and this whole relationship really forms the web of credit that our entire economy runs on. Understanding that is key.
Okay, so we know what it is, but how does it work? Let's track the journey of a single receivable, from the moment a sale is made all the way to when the cash finally comes in. This isn't just some boring accounting flow. This is the company's cash conversion cycle in action.
And here it is, the whole process laid out. It all starts with a sale on credit. Then, an invoice gets created with payment terms. You've probably seen net 30, which means payment is due in 30 days. As soon as that invoice is official, bam, the AR is on the balance sheet. And then comes step 4, the waiting game. And this is the critical part. Is it 30 days, 60, 90? Every single day in this phase is a day that the company's money is tied up. Finally, the customer pays, the IOU gets cleared, cash goes up, AR goes down, and the cycle is complete. A really well-run company moves through these steps fast.
Okay, we've defined it. We've traced its life. But here's the real question. Why does it matter so much? Why do analysts obsess over this one number? Well, it's because accounts receivable tells a deeper story about the company's health, its customers, and just how disciplined its operations are.
Just think of AR as a diagnostic tool. When you see a healthy, fast-moving AR balance, it screams strong liquidity and good customers. But on the flip side, if you see that number getting bloated and old, that's a massive red flag. It could mean they have bad credit policies, a lousy collections team, or maybe their customers are in trouble. A sudden spike in AR compared to sales could even signal some, let's say, aggressive counting. It's at the very core of working capital, and how a company manages it tells you everything about how well they turn their sales into cash.
Now for the fun part. Let's get into the real nuts and bolts here. We're going to put on our consultant hats and look at the specific tools we can use to actually measure a company's AR performance. This is how you go from just looking at numbers to generating real, data-driven insights.
This is the first and maybe the most critical question any analyst is going to ask. It's not just about if a company gets paid. It's about how fast. Because in business, cash is oxygen and speed matters. And lucky for us, there's a key metric to measure exactly that.
And that metric is the accounts receivable turnover ratio. Now, it sounds a little complicated, but the idea is actually super simple. It just answers one question. In a year, how many times does the company collect its entire AR balance? Think of it like a churn rate for your IOUs. How fast is that bucket being emptied and refilled?
So, a high ratio is usually a great sign. It means you've got efficient collections and good customers who pay on time. A low ratio, though, that's a warning light. It means cash is getting stuck somewhere. The problem could be internal, like a broken collections process, or it could be external, meaning their customers are struggling. And here's the key. You have to compare this ratio against their direct competitors to know if it's a them problem or an everybody problem.
Okay, a ratio is useful for sure. But let's be honest, it's not the easiest thing to wrap your head around. So let's translate that same insight into something we all get instantly: days.
And we do that with a metric called Days Sales Outstanding, or DSO. It's incredibly direct. If your company's payment term is 30 days, but your DSO is sitting at 55, you know you have a 25-day problem. That's 25 extra days your cash is tied up. But, and this is a key strategic point, is a lower DSO always better? Not so fast. An extremely low DSO could mean your credit terms are way too strict, and you might actually be losing sales to competitors who are a little more flexible. Managing DSO is a classic balancing act.
Of course, we're talking about the real world here. And in the real world, not everyone pays their bills. Selling on credit always comes with the risk that someone just won't pay. So that brings us to the dark side of AR. What happens when an IOU goes bad? So when a company knows an invoice is just not going to get paid, they've basically got two choices on the table. The first is to just write it off as a bad debt expense. That's a direct hit to their profits. The other option is to sell that bad debt to a collection agency for pennies on the dollar. That's called AR discounting. You get some cash back, but it's a pretty clear signal that your own efforts to collect have completely failed. Now, to deal with this risk, companies report what's called net receivables. And that word net is super important. It's not just the total of all invoices. It's a more realistic number. They take their total AR and then they subtract an estimate for what they think they won't collect. That estimate is called the allowance for doubtful accounts. And as an analyst, you watch this number like a hawk. A sudden change in that allowance can tell you if management is getting nervous about their customers' ability to pay.
All right, we have gone deep into the weeds here, so let's pull way back now and look at the big picture. After all of this, what's the ultimate lesson? What's the strategic takeaway? Here's the one thing I really want you to walk away with. Accounts receivable is not just an accounting number, it's a narrative. It tells you the story of a company's strategy. Who are its customers? How good are its operations? How well does it manage that critical trade-off between making a sale and actually getting the cash? Answering those questions is why managing AR is a strategic priority, not just some back-office task.
So the next time you're scanning a balance sheet and you see that line, you've got a choice. You can see a number or you can see a story. That single line is packed with insights about how a company really works day to day. It's way more than an asset. It's the result of their entire business strategy. Thanks for joining this explainer.